Ugh, fucking Fire Pro. Does not want to start. I hate when it does that sometimes. Alright. This should start it. Look at all that crazy Inception bullshit. Alright, so to avoid the Inception crap, I'm going to move that over there. So let me preface this by saying that I just built the version that I'm using, so it's not public yet. I don't think I changed anything major from the last public version, but if you notice something that is different on my screen than what you have seen, it's because I'm just using a version that's not public yet. So, yeah. So this is all about the upcoming and in testing story mode mod that I've been working on. You can see that there's a button for it here. This will get you into the player. It'll open up a select a story window. You can pick a story. We're not going to do that right now, since the goal of this is sort of to can't fucking talk tonight. To teach you guys how to sort of make a story, which is going to be found in the craft mode menu. If you don't have the craft mode thing because you don't have entrance craft, I have fixed it. You will get the craft mode menu without entrance craft, obviously, when I upload this version. So don't panic yet. You can't edit a story yet, but you will be able to when I update. So what you're going to want to do is click on this, and it'll bring up that same menu, but with two new buttons that say Edit Story and Delete Story. I need to add the button effects to the Delete Story button, apparently. We're going to go ahead and create a new story. Feel free to use the chat to ask questions or give suggestions about the story. I just want to make a basic, like, 3-branch story with some variables that get set. That way we can sort of reference things later in the story. So what I want to do is set up a story with 3 matches where you purposely lose the first match, and then it's referenced again in the last match, in the third match that you lost. The options will be different for whether you win or lose that first match. It'll be like a rematch or something. I'm not sure yet. So we'll figure it out as we go. So let's give this a name. We'll call this tutorial story. A simple tutorial story. So for this, it will default to any, which will bring up a menu when you start the story and allow you to just pick any wrestler that the user has installed, or you can come over here and add wrestlers. These wrestlers will be packaged with the story, so if you share the story, they will have whatever wrestlers they need. It does not package referees or rings. If it can't find the ring or the referee by name, it will just use the default Mr. Judgment and SWA ring. So it's not a huge deal if it can't find it, but it doesn't. Referees, I just haven't written a exporter for, and rings are complicated because of the image files, and I could include them in the story, but it would make the stories gigantic, and since they all needed to be loaded into memory, it would just, I just felt like it was too much, sort of an overkill thing. So I just decided not to do that. So basically, if you use a ring that the person playing your story doesn't have, it'll just default to the default SWA ring. So RWS can't see anything, or RSWS. Can you hear me talking, or is it just black? Let me ask him in the chat here. Alright. So let me get that sorted away, and then I can continue this here in a sec. Anybody else having any streaming problems with the visuals or anything? I know they're small. I had to shrink the story menu because apparently a lot of people in the community are not using monitors that are capable of 1600 by 900 or better. So I shrank it down to 1280 by 720, I think it is. So now, as long as your resolution is better than 1280 by 720, you should be able to work with the story mode stuff. I'm a little annoyed. I don't like the new layout. I liked it better when it was at 16 by 9. I know that the aspect ratio is still 16 by 9 at what I have it at now, but I liked it better when it was actually 1600 by 900 in size. So, but like I said, a lot of people apparently can't do that. So, okay. So he's going to switch to Twitch in a browser, so it looks like this is going to be taken care of. So let's get back on with it. So we got to pick some wrestlers here. Does anybody have any? Does it matter to anybody else? I have mostly guys from the 50s through the 80s. I don't really have any sort of plan for this story, so it doesn't really matter to me, but I can use guys that people want to use. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of pick them. So if anybody... Arn Anderson. Alright. We'll throw Arn in here. Let's see here. Arn Anderson. We'll add him. Any other suggestions? We're going to do Arn Anderson. We'll put Greg Valentine in there because we wanted to do at least 3 matches. So Valentine, Tully Blanchard, we'll throw him in. And I think I have Joe Blanchard, so we could do Tully and Joe. And then it kind of has some semblance of purpose, maybe? I don't know. Yeah, Joe Blanchard. Fantastic. Cool. So we've got Arn Anderson, Greg Valentine, Joe, and Tully Blanchard. So now the player wrestler I am going to set to Arn Anderson. Like I said, you could pick any, and it would allow you to use anyone that the story player has installed, or you can just assign them one. You can change it later on, and I'll show you how to do that. I don't know whether we'll do it in the story, but I'll at least show you how it's done. Alright, so here's some variables. I know I want to track whether whether the player has beaten the first wrestler. We'll say that you fight Joe Blanchard first. So we'll give the name Beaten Joe. And so people have expressed a ignorance about what the variable types mean. I'm using computer programming terms because those are the types that they hold. So a string is a text value. Like if you wanted to change it to a wrestler name, or let's say you could use this to store like babyface or heel, and then change it with choices or whatever, and then check against that later in the story. That would be where you would do that. You would want a string. You could use an integer, I suppose, but string is probably easier and less confusing. An integer value is a whole number between -100 and +100. I have set hard values there because I have these boxes and they need a hard value for min and max. So an integer value is between -100 and +100. A floating value is a value with decimal points. It can be any number from -100 to +100 and can include decimals. And this will round off to the nearest 2 decimals, but it doesn't have to. I couldn't imagine that you need to get more specific in these stories than hundredths of a place. So, yeah. A float that was a float value, and a Boolean value is a simple true or false value. Boolean is just a binary. It means a binary data type that has either a true or false value. So those are the value types. For this one, we're going to use a Boolean. We're going to set it to false, of course, at first, and then we're going to hit add variable. And if you come down here, you can see that it does not automatically set to true for some reason, or it automatically sets to true for some reason. So I have to fix that. But yeah, that's been a known bug. So that's why I came over here immediately and did it. I actually meant to fix that before I went on the air, but I forgot. So anyway, if you're setting up these stories now and you do a Boolean, make sure you come over here and set it to false if that's what you want the initial value to be. We can go back and add values later, or add variables later. That's the only one I know that we'll need. So we're going to go into story groups, and we're going to set up some story groups here. We're going to have the Joe Blanchard match, add. We want the Greg Valentine match, and then we'll do the Tully match. Alright, so those are going to be our story groups. You can add more of these later too. I'm just adding the ones that I know that we'll need. These are very nice for sorting things. If you only want to work on certain nodes, or you just want to filter nodes out to see like a certain branch of the story. Basically, the way that I envision story groups, they're sort of like your branches. So yeah, if you just want to see the nodes in a certain branch, that's a good way to filter things out. So let's set up a starting node. We click the story start thing here. Every story will need a starting node. Right now there is no check that makes sure that you have a starting node, so be sure to check. Just do it first. I will eventually add a check before this goes public, but yeah, right now there is none, so I'm just going to call it start. I am going to use a shitty last rights reference just because I can. I'm going to stick it in the none group because it really doesn't belong to a specific branch. It's just sort of the start of the story. The image locations. So these can be URLs, so you can actually put images online, like on Imager, and then reference them here, and then anyone who has your story it'll just pull it offline, as long as they have an internet connection. Or you can use hard links. So like if I was to type in /users Carl pictures arena.jpg, that would use the test background that I use for everything when I was testing all the background stuff. Or you can use, I guess, soft links, which are things like this, where you go dot, which means the directory that you're running from, story mode underscore data, images, and then an image name, and then it will draw it from the story mode data that's inside of your FirePro directory. But those are basically your three options. You can use hard-coded, like strict paths. You can use soft paths, which is, it will change depending on the user. And then you can use URLs from the internet. So I recommend that if you're going to share your story, to upload your images to Imager and just use the URL. It makes more sense. You don't have to include anything with your story. Everybody can get stuff off the internet. It's no big deal. So we'll just go ahead and use that for now. And then you just hit Add Node. You can't add the choices or anything special to the nodes until they're in the story. So you just set up the basics over here. So in this one, I am not going to add any character images or sounds because I don't have any. I know that makes this tutorial boring, but that's just the way it is. I just don't have any to include. So, yeah. I mean, I guess I have a Ted DiBiase one. Let's see if I can... I'm going to check for that. I have it uploaded on my Imager, so I guess I could show you how to use a URL in there. Not that I think that you couldn't figure out how to use a URL in there, but let's see. Oh, maybe I don't have Ted DiBiase in here. I thought I did. Add image. Browse. I'm going to add him just because it will be easier than not adding him. No, I guess I don't have him. Never mind. So, I thought I had it, but I do not. So, oh well. Can I go full screen? No, it wouldn't matter anyway. The Storycraft window doesn't go full screen. This is as big as it gets. It is 1280 by 720. I'm streaming at, I think, 16 by 9 by default, so it looks smaller than it. Or actually, I'm streaming at like, oh Jesus, my resolution is very high. It's like a 4K monitor. So anyway, so yeah, this is why it's small. Yeah, you don't need to read it. I'll explain things to you. It doesn't matter what we're typing necessarily. And when this is on demand, you'll be able to blow it up a little better. And since I'm streaming at such a high resolution, it'll look better. So I apologize for not being able to full screen it right now, but you should be able to read it better if you put it into full screen mode here in the in your Twitch stream. I mean, then you miss out on the chat, but it's up to you. But yeah, no, I can't full screen it. Sorry. But like I said, it's not super important. I'll explain what you need to type in or what things are. Anyway, yeah, I don't have any character images. I don't have any sounds either. But if you put a sound, it will play when the node is loaded. So, like, for example, like the Fighting Road had things like when you traveled on an airplane, it did the airplane sound at the very beginning of the, it would load the image and the text and it would play the airplane sound. This will do the same thing. So the sound location can be the same. It can be a URL. It can be like a file. If you include like a file, you need to include that in when you share the story. It will not automatically put it in the story like it will with wrestlers. So when you bundle it all up in like an archive file, like a RAR or a zip file, you'll need to include that and include the path so that everything turns out okay. So we're going to need to add some choices here to move on. So we've got our starting node. Let's just add a choice that says, take me to my first match. Except let's spell first right, because otherwise I'm going to go nuts. Okay. So we don't need any conditions here. We don't need any commands here. Oh, shit. So here's the problem. You need to include a link. If you just leave this blank, it won't do anything. So we need to actually add the next node first. I don't necessarily like the way that that's set up, but I can't think of a better way to do it. I could let you type in node names there, but then the issue is that people will typo them and assume that they're correct, and then I will get emails saying that things do not work because people can't proofread their shit, and so I don't want to deal with that, so I'm just forcing you to do it in an order that is a little more cumbersome. Sorry. I do this for free, basically, so you can deal with cumbersome. So yeah, let's give this a node ID. So we'll go Joe Blanchard start. And we'll throw it in the Joe Blanchard match group. And we'll add it. We don't need it. We'll add the text and stuff in a sec. So add choice, we'll go take me to my first match. And then we'll link it to the Joe Blanchard start node. So, we don't need any commands here. A command is if this choice is selected, it will do these things in the command list when the player picks the choice. So you can change variables, increment variables, subtract from variables. Yeah, change wrestlers. You could actually have that change wrestlers. So that's pretty much how that works. It's pretty simple. I'll get into it at a point here in the story, but like I said, this is just to get you into the first thing. So we can do this. Joe, hi, I'm Joe Blanchard, and I've been selected to break you into the business. I'm not going to take it easy on you. Get ready. Okay, I'm just going to leave that blank. This time we don't need a background image. Like I said, it will be less interesting, but this isn't really meant to be a story to play. It's just meant to be sort of a tutorial. So, let's see, choice text. Let's go, old man. I'm pretty sure that, God damn it, I forgot to add the node again. See, you have to add the node before every. So, Joe Blanchard match. Add node. So here we go. We'll have to do that again. I'm Joe Blanchard. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Add choice. Let's go, old man. Links to Joe Blanchard match. Okay. Doesn't need any conditions or anything. Doesn't need any commands. Son of a bitch. I keep forgetting that you need to hit the change button there. Otherwise it freaks out and doesn't save it. Joe, blah, blah, blah. Now he's saying even less. So yeah, do that. Save node changes. Otherwise it will not save them. That is again on purpose because people fucking can't figure out how they will literally type shit in there and then they cannot figure out why it didn't add something new. So I've given up and I've added these boxes over here that add new ones and these ones over here that edit them. And so yeah, now you have to hit the button. So I'm still not used to it. This is new for me. I've only used it to do really, really simple test stories that are like 3 nodes long. So anyway, so we'll go back to the match now. We'll add this to the Joe Blanchard match group. The story text. You have a match with Joe Blanchard. And then since this is going to be a match, we're going to hit new match data. It's going to open up this window. This window will allow us to set up the match. As you can see, it only allows you to use wrestlers that you have selected to the story. So we're going to do Arn Anderson. We're going to do Joe Blanchard. And then we're going to go to match rules. I'm going to turn off entrances. I don't want them. It's just supposed to be a stupid, simple thing. We'll set it in the dojo. Patrick Sullivan, that's fine. FCCW, sure. Unlimited. Explosion time. I don't know why that defaults to 1 instead of 0, but it does. So, alright. So there's that. and then you're going to have links. I recommend adding the start, or adding the nodes before you set up the match. We didn't this time, so we're going to have to come back in and edit this. So I'm going to hit OK. And then if you click on this, you'll notice that it changes to edit match data instead of new match data. New match data, sorry. If a player was to set to any, what any? Like the wrestler at the beginning? Sorry, I'm just reading something from the chat. But if your player wrestler is set to any, it will allow you to pick a wrestler at the very beginning. When you start the story, it'll allow the player to pick any wrestler that's installed on the user's system, and then that will become the player wrestler, and it will show up in the list. Yeah. So, but right now we have it. You know what? That's a good question. Yeah, I need to do that. I didn't even think about that. Yep. So yeah, I will have to fix that. But right now, yeah, if they select anyone, it won't be in the. It actually won't be in the match thing. So I need to fix that. That is an oversight on my part. Thank you, because I would have missed that. Okay. So now that that's done, we've got the match data there. We need to add win. So we got Joe Blanchard win. We'll add it to the Joe Blanchard match thing. U1. Add node. Joe Blanchard match. Joe Blanchard loss. You lost. I know these are not exciting names, but whatever. Joe Blanchard draw. Joe Blanchard match. You and Joe Blanchard wrestled to a draw. Add data. Okay, so now we go back to the match, and we hit edit match data, and we come back to the links, and we need to add the win, the loss, and the draw. And these down here, they have settings for win under rating threshold and loss over rating threshold. So each match data, you can set up a ratings threshold. And if you win but score under the ratings threshold, you can actually go to a different node or you can branch off. But if the ratings threshold is set to 0, these will never trigger. So I always just set them to the win and loss settings. And since in the match rules you can see that our ratings threshold is 0, these will never trigger. So just win and loss is fine. So we have that set up, and we're good. And we can go here and say you have a match with Joe Blanchard scheduled. And save node changes, and then there we go. Now we've got this going on. So here in the win, loss, and draw things, we want to sort of give some players, we're going to set a variable. So when they win, you're going to come here and say init commands. And these are commands that are executed as soon as the branch is loaded. So we want to set that variable that we created, the beat Joe Blanchard variable. So what we're going to do is hit add command. We're going to come down here and hit the set command. Affected variable, we want beaten Joe. And then we can only change the bool value since this is a Boolean value. We're going to set that to true and then hit OK. And then it'll pop up in this little window. It'll say set beaten Joe. It won't tell you what it's going to set it to, but it'll just say set beaten Joe. So that's all we want to do for that one. And then in the loss, we want to set beaten Joe to false, just in case it is not false for some stupid reason. Add command. We're going to do the same thing. Set beaten Joe and set it to false. And we're going to do the same thing for draw. Let's see, new match data. Nope, init commands. That's what we need. Add command. Set beaten Joe to false. Okay. Um, I don't see why FirePro doesn't actually care if the player, if you have a mirror match. So it wouldn't matter to me. Like if a some people use these sort of things to do wacky shit like Mortal Kombat, and if they want to have a mirror match, I got no issues with that. So I'm not going to add that check to make sure that that the player's character isn't the opponent. If they want to make a mirror match, then that's fine. There's not much I can do about that without limiting creativity. It's like I know that in some senses the player might get an any. You know, they might set up a story with any, and then the player selects a player that's also used in the story, and it's totally inadvertent. But fixing that would basically limit players' creativity. So I'm just if they yeah, exactly, if they care, they can choose who the player is controlling. And honestly, you can change it in the story, so it doesn't really. It's not like you're limited to one player character throughout the story. Technically, I can let you pick any and then force you into playing somebody else later in the story. It's just you have that ability. What you can't do is force the player to pick somebody later in the story. It won't. It won't. It'll freak out. So. Could you make a no? You could make a variable that checks if a certain wrestler is the player character, but you couldn't make a variable that checked for any, I guess, because the any only exists in that one menu, and it's instantly overwritten when the player selects their wrestler. So I hope that makes sense. Like it only exists in the raw story data. It's overwritten in memory as soon as the player selects a wrestler. So it doesn't exist as any anymore. So okay, so we've got your basic shitty Joe Blanchard match where if you beat him, I think what I'm gonna do is in the third match against Tully, if you beat him, he gets real mad at you. I don't know, something like that. You know, you disrespected his dad or something, just to have some different stuff going on in the story and sort of show you how to branch based on variables and things. Okay, so we're gonna just add one more match that doesn't really matter, just to throw some extra stuff in. We're gonna have the Greg Valentine match. We'll have Valentine start, and then Greg. You know what? I can work with this. Valentine start, win. Let's see. It's my turn to test you. Simple, easy, whatever. Then we'll have Valentine start, lose. Greg. Sure you're worth my time. But I was asked to do this, so okay. So here we go. We're gonna have it branch where you can go two different ways depending on whether you beat Joe Blanchard in the Greg Valentine thing. Ultimately, they won't matter. They're going to lead to the same match. It will just give you a little bit different flavor text. So here we go. In the Joe Blanchard win, we're going to add a choice and go like, we'll say all right, because the story text is you won, and then we're going to have it linked to Valentine start win. Doesn't need any commands, doesn't need any conditions, because the only way you get to Valentine win is if you enter the Joe Blanchard win node. So there we go. The Blanchard loss, we're going to set up a choice. We'll say damn, and this links to Valentine loss. OK. And I'm going to treat the draw like a loss as well, so we'll go add choice. It's going to link to Valentine loss. And I'll just say, oh well. Okay. So basically now we've got our match with Joe Blanchard and the 3 things that can happen afterwards. And then they branched either one of 2 responses from Greg Valentine, depending on whether you win or lose. And so now we need to set up the Valentine match. So we'll do that. We'll add it to the Valentine match group, add the node. We're going to click on it. Then we're going to add the node data or the match data. We'll go with Joe Bland or your Arn Anderson. We're going to Greg Valentine you. We'll set this all up again. Pretty simple stuff. We're going to go to the training center. Critical rate on low. Explosion time on 0. I'm going to say you need to get above an 80% in the Valentine match to get the better of the win situations. Again, we didn't set these up first, so I'm just going to hit OK and I'll go back and change them. So we're going to need Valentine win. And again, feel free to ask questions in the chat. People are being very quiet in the chat, so I don't know, if I'm explaining things well enough. But if I'm not, let me know. We'll say you beat the hammer. Don't need any Valentine loss. The hammer smashed you. Valentine match. Add data. Did I did. Okay. Valentine draw. Can you carry over damage? No. It isn't. There wouldn't be a way to do it. Tournaments have this whole big system for storing all of that stuff. This does not. I don't know whether I will add it. It is not that important to me that damage is carried over. What I may allow you to do is when you set up a match, you can set up an initial life multiplier. It is hidden from the user, like in the default game, but I can allow you to set it so that you might start at half health or something. There would be no way to store it between branches of the story, but I could allow you to say, okay, well, you've had one match tonight, so you start this next match at 60% health or something. But other than that, there's no way for me to do that. Technically, that modifier is actually already saved in the story data, so it just involves me putting in a UI element so that the user can set it. Right now, it just defaults to 1 all the time, so which is 100%. So yeah, but no, it could be done that way, but yeah, I couldn't have you carry over exact values. It just wouldn't work that way. You and the hammer wrestled to a draw. Okay. And then, unlike the Joe Blanchard match where we didn't set a ratings threshold, we did here, so we're going to need 2 more branches here. So we got Valentine win. Valentine win poor. Craig Valentine match. You beat the hammer, but the match stunk. Add node. And then Valentine win, or Valentine loss, good. The hammer beat you, but you really shined in there. Yeah, I am not a writer, so most of what I do here is going to be very simple. I think I've said that a bunch of times, but I can't reiterate it enough because I am not good at creatively. I'm just not a creative person that way. So I program the frameworks, you guys do the creative lifting. So anyway, we need to go back to that Valentine's match and edit the links. So when you win, you want Valentine win. When you lost, you want Valentine loss. When you draw, you want Valentine draw. When you win under the ratings threshold, you want win poor, and when you win over or lose over the ratings threshold, you want loss good. Okay, so there we go. We got that going on. Something that I didn't point out with the Joe Blanchard, so matches, they will never have any choices. If you add them, they will be ignored. Your only option when you run into a match node, the only option that will appear in the box is start match. So if you need to give players choices, you need to do that before you hit them, before you add match data, because the second that you add match data to a node, it will ignore anything you have in those choices. And so if you had choices that set variables or changed variables, you'll need to do that in the node before the match, because once you hit the match, it just goes start match, and that's the only option you have. So I've seen this exact angle in Tennessee All Pro Wrestling. Okay. I mean, like I said, it's a very... I just wanted to do like a simple, like, 3-match story where you're breaking in, I guess, and, Tully Blanchard and Joe Blanchard worked out, because now that you've... Whether you beat or don't beat Joe Blanchard, Tully Blanchard will react differently, and since there's a match in the middle, you have to use the... like the variable, and so yeah, that was a good way to have a variable go on there. So now we need these options in the Valentine win setup. So when you beat the hammer, I'm going to add a choice, and I'm going to say awesome. I'm also going to add another choice that makes you come off like a sort of cocky asshole. Oh shit, I forgot to add the... I'm going to add two more nodes. I'm going to add Tully start, and we'll add it to the Tully match. And this one will be the less cocky asshole start. So Tully we'll go... Good on you, kid. Alright, well, we'll use your name, fuck it. You can do this, too. So if you put the word name in brackets, in these brackets, it will replace it with whatever the player's character name is. So that's good to know. It's time for your final test. Add node. So we're going to go... Now we're going to add one more, and we'll say Tully start cocky. Add it to the Tully match. You've got a mouth on you. I'm gonna shut it. Alright, so here we go. We're gonna go back to this Valentine win. Add some choices. Are those what fields? No, yeah, the story text is the only one that works in. You wouldn't want to use that. A variable needs a name, like a static name, and the values that you set also need a static value. They can't be changing. They can't be another variable. That would be a little difficult for programming to figure out in general. You don't generally allow things to compile with variables setting variables. It just, yeah, it gets confusing. So, but yeah, no, it needs to be a static check. you can't check against some variable thing. So let's see. We want, if you beat Greg Valentine, we're just going to say awesome, and that's going to be the good one, and that goes into the Tully start, the not cocky one. Okay. And we're going to add another choice, though. We're going to set a condition for this choice. It will only show up if the beaten Joe variable equals true. And then it is going to link to Tully start cocky, and it is going to say, I can't wait to whip Tully like I whipped his father. Alright, so now we have two choices there. One just moves into the regular Tully Blanchard storyline, one moves into the Tully Blanchard storyline, but as a cocky sort of thing. So they're both going to lead to the next thing, which is just the Tully match. So you have a match with Tully Blanchard. Add node. You could get way more in depth there and have essentially two whole separate branches for, you know, whether you were cocky about beating Tully's dad or whether you didn't beat Tully's dad or weren't cocky about it. You know, you could get more in depth. It's going to go, no matter how how you talk to him, it's going to go into the same match. So I'm just going to be lazy, and since this is simple and tutorially, there's no reason to get all fancy. So we're going to go with Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard. We're going to do a regular match, time limit unlimited. We'll go here, we'll go here, low critical rate, no explosion time. I'm not going to set a threshold. We'll hit OK. Again, I'm leaving the links blank. I know that we'll have to come back and do them. I don't always recommend that you do that, but if you get into a flow where you do that a lot, it's easy to, to just continue with that flow. So it really just depends on how your brain works. Some people might like adding them first, and then that way they can fill them in. Some people might like adding them later and then coming back and editing the match data. It just depends. So now that we have the match set up, we're going to add the win, loss, and draw. Tully win. And this is going to be part of the Tully match. You beat Tully. Add node. We'll do Tully match, Tully loss. Tully beat you. Add node. And Tully draw. Tully match. You and Tully wrestled to a draw. Alright. Let's spell draw right. Add node. So that's pretty much all you need for this one, because we didn't set the ratings threshold, so it doesn't really matter. One thing that we do have to do is come back and add the things for the Valentine stuff, though. I forgot about that. See, this is actually a lot of work. This is probably why Spike did not introduce this sort of thing when they did their fighting road, because honestly, I like my data structure better, but it's essentially the exact same thing with more power in variables and branching than Fighting Road has. But essentially, they could have, the way that they use their Fighting Road, they could have allowed you to edit it. It's a lot of work, and they probably figured that most people are not going to want to go through all of this. So, yeah. So if Greg Valentine beats you, we'll say shit. And it is going to go to the Tully start. And if you draw with Valentine, we'll add a choice that is like, well, darn. And it's going to link to Tully start as well. Okay. So there's that stuff. And now we need the, if you won and it was a shitty match, we're going to say, I can do better. And it's going to link back to the Valentine match. Or we'll have him say, a win is a win is a win. And that one is going to link to the Tully match. Okay. So, if you beat Greg Valentine, but do it poorly, you can actually redo... I've set it up now so that you can actually redo that match. And then it will allow you to, try it again. Or you could just continue on to the Tully match. And so, a good loss. Let's see. I can't have a loss on my record. And we'll link back to the Valentine match anyway. And hit OK. And then... The world needs quality job guys. And that one is going to link to the Tully match. Okay. So there we go. Now we've got the Tully start. Good on you name. It's time for the final thing. I'm ready for it. And this is going to link to the actual match. The cocky one. You got a mouth on you. I'm going to shut it. We'll just say bring it. And this is going to leak. This is also going to link to the match. The match doesn't need any stuff. It does need me to go back and do this. Win link, we need the Tully win. Loss link, Tully loss. Draw link, Tully draw. These don't even technically need to be set, but I set them anyway, just because I do. So those are all set now. And then when you win, I'm going to set up a node that says end, and it's going to be story end. When you check that, it means that whatever option you select from the when you hit the select option button, it will just close out. It's the end of the story. So ends our night, which is another Last Rites reference. I don't know whether anybody knows who Last Rites is, but they're a Boston hardcore band and they're good. So anyway, add node. So we'll go with the Tully match, and then we've got the draw. You beat Tully. We're going to have a condition here. We're going to have equals, checked variable, beat Joe, bool value, we want true. This will only appear if you also beat his dad. A dryer running in the background? No. Nothing is running in the background. I don't hear anything. I don't know what you're hearing. Is anybody else hearing it? I have a very cheap microphone, so that could be what it is. I think it was like $12.99 for like a headset mic. It's not very nice, but it works. I'm not a professional streamer, so it gets the job done. I told you I'd smack you around just like your dad. Links to end. Oop, that didn't select it. End. Okay. And add choice. We'll go ahead with yeah, it could be the computer fan, although my computer fan isn't really running very loudly, so I don't know. I don't think so. I can't hear it. So we'll say, if you beat Tully in your third test, guess I passed all my tests. Okay, and that'll go to end as well, because that's all we're doing here. Loss, I still need work. Links to end. Okay. And Tully draw, add choice. Let's go again. Someone must win. Do that. And then we'll go add choice. I'll get you next time. Links to end. Okay. So that pretty much is the end of this story. It's 3 matches and a bunch of nodes. There's no real story to it at all. If you wanted to add real story, it would probably require more nodes and some images and that sort of thing. This was just sort of to teach you how to do this. Yeah, I'll archive the stream. I'll probably put it up on YouTube, so it's archived permanently. Because I don't plan on writing friggin' documentation for this. I don't like writing documentation, so this will probably serve as the general documentation for this, because I don't think anything's going to change crazily before we do this, or before I release this. There were a couple of things that I wanted to show you guys. Like, let's say in the Tully start, you wanted to change your wrestler for some stupid reason. So you would, in the init, you could do this on a choice as well, but I'm going to do it as an initiation command. So you want the set, and then there's an affected variable here that says player's wrestler, and then it'll open up. It'll allow you to type into the string value. All you got to do is type in a name. It can be any wrestler name that you can think of. If the player has that wrestler installed on their computer, it will switch to that wrestler. If the player is in the story and it can't find a local version of it, it will use the version from the story. If neither of those things are true, like let's say you type in fucking, I don't know, Babalu something, and the person playing your story doesn't have that wrestler installed, and he's obviously not included in this story, it would just default to John Smith, the wrestler that edit mode creates when you create a new wrestler from default. So it wouldn't break the story. It would just you just end up with the super default wrestler. So, but that's how that works. You just type in the name. It will try to find the wrestler, and if it can't, it will use the default. So, anyway, so that's how that works. I said I'd show you how that works before we left here. So, anyway, a couple more things. So, like I said, you can filter this so you can only see the Valentine stuff or the Joe Blanchard stuff, or the things that are not. See, this wasn't set to a group, so you can actually filter that out. Oh, I forgot to hit save. That's why I didn't. There we go. But yeah, so these are nice for that sort of thing. You can hit none and you see our start and end, or all, and see everything. This down here, the node flow, like let's say we select the Tully start and click node flow. It'll tell you where it's linked from and where it links to. So this can be good for figuring out like how you can get to certain nodes as your story gets more complicated, and where certain nodes lead to. I find that helpful when I'm messing with things and I'm like, did I set up proper links or whatever, So that's that. You can also preview a node. So I think I actually have a thing there, so let's do this one. If you preview the node, it'll bring up the story player, and it will have all of the options and the text and everything, but it won't let you, if you select anything, it doesn't matter what you select, it's just going to close that, and then you're back to your story or the creator menu. So That's what that does. And then you can remove a node down here as well. I don't want to remove anything right now. So one thing to mention, because I made the screen smaller, the only place that I could fit the save button was back here on the story details. So if you use this close box up here without hitting save, you will lose everything. So make sure to hit save first. It will use your story name as the file. I'll show you where to find the files in case you want to save them. But once you've hit save, you can go ahead and close that out. It will reload everything. And then I will show you, I'm going to close out Fire Pro. I want to show you how it handles wrestlers. And then while I'm reopening Fire Pro, I can show you where to find your stories. So here we are, just in your base Fire Pro thing. For me, it's Z:/Steam Games. For you, it might be C:// Steam or Program Files 86. I don't know. It just depends on where you have Steam installed. Mine is in Steam Games on the Z drive. So what you're going to want to do is there's going to be a new folder in here called Story Mode Data. Just like there is Modpack data and MOTW data, you're going to click that. There's going to be a directory in here called Stories. And inside there is going to be all of your stories. You're going to have, and any of the stories that you want. So here we have the tutorial story.smd. It stands for Story Mode Data. And you can, if you wanted to share your story, you could just give them this. If you need to also include images and sounds, you can create like an archive and put everything in there. Again, make sure that the structure that you use for your data is correct. So if you if you use hard links, I do not recommend that you use hard links unless you're not going to share the story. You need to make sure that everything installs from the drive that you put it on. If you are using soft links, you need to make sure that it installs from the main Fire Pro directory. If you don't know how to do that, I don't know what to tell you. Ask in the Discord chat and maybe somebody will help you. Maybe me, maybe somebody else. I don't know. You'll figure it out. We'll get it handled. But that's where that is. It comes with all the wrestlers you need, but like I said, the images and the sounds, unless you use online stuff, it does not include those, so you're going to have to include them yourself. Alright, so let's fire up Fire Pro. Yeah, I could probably have a box that asks you if you want to save the story before you close or something. That way, you're always prompted to save when closing the window, even if you've already saved, just to be on the safe side. Couldn't hurt. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to load up my default game, which has like almost no wrestlers on it, and I'll show you how it installs and uninstalls wrestlers, and so you don't have to worry about whether players have the edits that you want. One thing to keep in mind, it will always, if a player has a wrestler downloaded, like let's say they have a Tully Blanchard edit already, it will use the edit that they have before it will use the one from the story. I do that because some people have preferred edit makers, and so they, if you're trying to force them to use DJKM77's Tully Blanchard edit, but they have another one that they prefer to use, why should they have to sit through DJKM's, which is mostly a returns holdover? So it just allows people to still play the stories, but using the edits that they prefer for the most part. And then if it can't find one, it will use whatever edit you provide. So that's pretty decent and easy. What if the names don't match? What do you mean? You'll have to expand on that a little more. Okay, so now I'm going to show you I don't have any of these edits installed on here. We'll go load edit. See, we've got Adrian Street, Bill Dundee, Tess Testerson, and John Smith. But if I go to story mode and I load up our tutorial story and I go select, and it will take a little bit to load because it's got to do all of the installation and all of that stuff. So now I go back to edit mode, which you can do because the story box is not a dialog box. You're able to do other stuff while it's open. You can see that it installed all of the wrestlers that we need for our story. Return. So let's bring up our story menu again. And we've got so begins our night, and then we can say take me to our first match, and it will get rid of the thing because we didn't set another background. If you do not set a background, it will just null, so it will just be a blank transparent image essentially. So it will not keep the one that you had before it. So if you're looking to like not change the background, you do need to set that every time. It is on purpose because if I didn't do that, there would be no way to clear a background. So, yeah. So, yeah, if you need to continue a background through multiple things, you do have to enter the URL every time. So anyway, up here in options, you can set this to always CPU. So even if the player says that you should control one of these, but you just are a simmer and have absolutely no fucking interest whatsoever in playing a game, you could set that to always CPU. And like, so for our story, when we created it, we actually set it so that Arn Anderson would be played. He'd be controlled by player one. But I'm going to set that as always CPU and hit select. And then you have a match with Joe Blanchard scheduled, so we're going to start the match. And then this is going to do its thing. It's going to start loading up. Here we go. In the Performance Center with the ring that I don't have on this save. And we're going to get an announcer about Arn Anderson. And Joe Blanchard, even though he doesn't have a name. So, now if you watch, they're both going to be controlled by the CPU, even though we told him not to. I'm going to go ahead and blast through this because I just want to play through the story once. So, Arn Anderson beat Joe Blanchard. So that's good because that gives us some options that wouldn't pop up otherwise. So I'm glad that that happened. You won. All right, so now let's select that. Now it's my... Oh, we forgot to put a fucking thing in here. It's my turn to test. You see, we have no... So what we're going to do is we're going to save our progress. The hammer. And we're going to quit. That takes us back here. And now watch if we go to edit mode, wrestler edit, we go to look. It got rid of all the wrestlers from the story. So you don't need to worry about your stories clogging up people's edit lists. It will remove, unless something happens like it crashes, it will remove them when they quit. So let's go take care of this real quick. We'll add a, we want the tutorial story, select. Here. Oh, crap, that was the wrong thing. So we're going to quit again. We need this. Craft mode, story craft, tutorial story, select. Now, we go back to nodes, Valentine. Yeah, see, we didn't add any stuff to the start. So let's just add a choice. We'll say let's do this. Links to Valentine match. And then start lose. I'm not even sure that you're worth my time. I'm worth it. Sure. Valentine. Nope, we don't want Valentine win. That would be bad. Okay, so now we've done that. Now let's go save and close and story mode and tutorial. tutorial story and select. And then, see, we're here, we just go to load save, we'll load up the hammer, and boom, we're back to where we were. It's my turn to test you. Let's do this. Select. Start match. We don't have any text for the match. Whatever. Text for the match isn't super important. But I do recommend that you fill them out because people are going to expect it. So here's Anderson and Valentine. Anderson is going to kill me because it does not save your CPU setting currently. I need to add that in. So that was player 1 getting his ass kicked by the CPU because I wasn't playing. So we'll hit that now. The hammer smashed you. Shit. And then it went to the Tully Blanchard thing. It says, Tully, good on you, Arn Anderson. It's time for your final test. I'm ready for it. You have a match with Tully Blanchard. Start. And then, yeah, it's going to do this. The shadows happen. There's not much I can do about them. They're part of loading matches without quitting out to the menu first. So, yeah. You beat Tully. I guess I smacked you around just like your dad. Select. And then it's so ends our night, exit story mode, select, and it will quit out. So, anyway, so that's how that works. Like I said, it's pretty simple. If you want the shitty tutorial story, I will put it in the Discord so you can grab it and take a look at it. I do need to fix a couple of things with the that were brought up in here. Things like the player wrestler being any and then not appearing in the list of wrestlers because it wasn't added to the wrestler info. So I need to fix that, and I can fix that, and I will fix that. But yeah, after you fix it, it's fixed. It works. I'll add a text for the. Well, I could do that now while I'm talking. I can add a text to the Greg Valentine, the match thing that popped up that didn't have a text. Valentine match. You have a match with the hammer. Save changes. And then does the Tully match have a... Yeah, it does. Okay. So now everything should have story text. There you go. I fixed it. So the size of the font is partially due to the fact that if I raise the size of the font... No, the arena is an image that I pulled off my hard drive. It's just, I used it to test the background thing. It doesn't include any images. It's up to you to find them and include them. This literally is the framework, and it's up to you to find all of the creative bits. All the sounds, that's up to you. All of the images, that's up to you. I don't include anything but the framework. The story itself, when you share it, will not include images in the actual story file. I explained why that is when I talked about rings, because it doesn't include rings either, or referees. Referees it probably will before public release, but rings it will never include because... So when I load these, every bit of them has to be loaded into memory. And so if it included all of the images that people used, I mean... If people really got into this, I mean, you could be talking several hundred megabytes worth of images, and with people running into the memory limit already, it just seemed like overkill to tax people that much. So that's why I recommend that you use online URLs for the images and use sound sparingly, because you will probably have to package the sounds with the story. So, but I mean, yeah. Um, you know, what I might be able to do is allow it to automatically set up rings that are, that use no images. So it will be able to do the colors and the basic setup, but it won't have the texture files. Um, you could do background music if you wanted, but keep in mind each node is only able to play one sound at a time. So if you did background music, you wouldn't be able to use any sound clips or any sound effects or anything. Really, they're meant to be just like simple sound things. I explained them a little bit earlier. Like if you played Fighting Road, when you went to America, it showed the picture of the plane, and it was like, you're headed to America, and it played the plane sound. That's what it's for. It's for simple, easy things. I think it will load MP3s, it will load WAV files, it will basically load anything that Windows loads natively because I'm just using the really standard Windows sound player that's built into .NET. So it should load any of those. Although I don't know whether you really want to play anything super long because I don't think that it will stop when it goes into the next node. I could set it up to stop it if people thought that they might want to do that. But then you run into the issue of if you used background music, it would start it at one node and then stop it and start it again in the next node. So yeah, I don't recommend using it for background music. It's not really what it was designed for. It was more designed for silly, just audio that conveyed sort of you know, a sense of what was going on in the story. Like I said, maybe like an airplane, or if you had a story with a car crash, you could use a crash sound or something like that, just to add a little bit of flavor to the story. So, okay, so let's go save this since I made some changes. We'll kill that. Everything's looking good. Are there any more questions before I head out, or anything that people want to see? Like I said, you could get pretty in depth with the way that it is now. It is not. I don't want to say it's not user friendly. I think it's plenty user friendly. It's just it is a lot of work. Like you are not going to come up. It doesn't do any work for you, so you're not going to just be able to whip things out without putting in a substantial amount of effort to make sure everything is linked on your end, and your story is good. But I think that it's pretty cool, and I think that it's easily as good as Fighting Road, in my opinion, except for the people who want it to be a career mode. It will not ever be a career mode because it does not have access. You cannot access the edit mode with just that one wrestler with a certain amount of points. That is just not the way that it is designed. It is not what it's set up to do. It would be a huge undertaking to set that up, and I'm not interested in doing it. Like, you could have a story mode where the player changed characters multiple times through the story, and you leveled them up yourself if you wanted to. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's not really meant to be a career mode sort of thing, so. But yeah, so if nobody has anything else that needs attention, can you change characters? Yeah, I explained that a little bit earlier. There's actually a command that you can either use on a choice or when a node triggers that will allow you to change the character. You can change characters to characters that are outside of the story. Because it really just takes a text. It just takes a string, like a text string. So you hit the chain, the wrestler, player's wrestler variable, and then you can just type in what you want the wrestler to change to, and if it finds it, it will change it to it. If it cannot find it, it will just use the default John Smith wrestler. So. But the player has no control over it. The player cannot change their wrestler in the story. The player can pick a wrestler at the very beginning of a story if the if the story creator wants them to, but otherwise the story creator is the person with all the power. The player just has to do what the story creator wants, basically. So it won't be like where you, as the player, can switch your character halfway through the story. But if the creator wanted to, say, move you to another wrestler, they absolutely could. Like if somebody wanted to create the story of the four pillars in Japan, Misawa, Muto, they could. They could do that and um, run you through all four of them in the same story if they wanted to. Um, I might set it up so that the text box will not display if there's no text. That wouldn't be too hard to do if that was your thing. No, there's no node limit. You could, I mean, I think the note it's a list box, so or it's a list. So feasibly, everything is indexed with an integer, and I think that 32-bit programs, which this is because FirePro is a 32-bit program, I think the limit is like 2,100,000,000. Anyway, it's a outrageous number. You would run into memory problems holding all of that in memory before you would run into like an actual limit where it just couldn't take anymore. What? Oh, am I wrong on the four pillars? Yeah, it's been a long time. I always assumed that it was Misawa, Muto, uh, Kobashi, and Kawada, actually. Or no, Hashimoto. But anyway, yeah, it happens. You get confused sometimes. Um, I haven't paid attention to 90s Japanese wrestling in probably a decade, to be honest. It's been a while. Yeah, the King of the Colosseum cover is exactly what I was thinking of. So, yeah, that's where I got confused. Yeah, the Three Musketeers. That's. Anyway, you get what I mean. Everybody understood what I meant, even though I was wrong, and I will openly admit that I was wrong, and that it was a silly mistake, and shit happens. So, but yeah, I was thinking of the King of Colosseum cover when I said the four pillars. But anyway, everybody gets what I meant. So, is there anything else that people are interested in? Um, is there anything that you saw when I was doing the test story that you're like, this would be a good suggestion, or anything like that? I can always add stuff. Right now, this is still a test version, so one thing that I will urge you if you decide to dive into this after watching this, until it's public, do not create any or do not start anything that is serious, because data structures might change. I am not guaranteeing that things that you create now won't be broken 3 test versions later. I'm not guaranteeing that anything that you create now will work on the public version. So this is really for testing. Don't go nuts, don't go off the rails trying to create some crazy in-depth story right now. I would like y'all to try it and create some basic stuff. It doesn't have to be as simple as this. It can be more in-depth, but don't do anything where you're dumping 20 or 30 hours into creating some crazy story, because I may invalidate the whole fucking thing in in 2 seconds with an upload. So um, the the thing is that, so with the sizes, I originally it was larger. It was a lot larger, but the people who were testing it did not. I found out that most people in the community do not have outrageous monitors. I think the monitor that I use for programming on and for playing FirePro on is 4K, so it's gigantic as far as um, the the available resolutions are. So I had the window was much larger, which allowed the images to be larger and but most people don't, so I had to shrink it down to 1080 by 720. So that's how big the form is now. So that's all the space I had to play with. So it's like I sort of had to just do what I had to do. It will resize the images, but I will post in the Discord what the default image box sizes are, so that you can sort of get things in that range or multiples of that, so it will rescale properly. Because it will rescale the images for you, so it won't like um, cut things off or overrun the image box or anything. Text limit in nodes is the same as the node limit. Um, it's a character limit, so it's not like, but you're basically limited to 2 billion, whatever whatever the maximum amount that an integer can be in a 32-bit program. So, and it's a text box, so it will have a scroll bar. If you exceed the size of the box, it will put in a scroll bar for you, so users will be able to scroll down and see the text. So it's not like it will cut it off. No. So this right now does not make it. You cannot schedule Royal Rumbles. You cannot do Texas Death Matches. It literally is using Vanilla Fire Pro matches. I do not know whether I will change that. It just isn't that big of a deal to me, and it seems like it would be a lot of extra work to include other stuff that wouldn't necessarily improve anything. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm gonna say, is that don't hold your breath for modded match types. You can still do them manually. um, you could include a little note saying, like, please check the Texas Deathmatch box in the more match options, form in the Modpack before this match or whatever, and then it will do its thing. But as far as interviews go, no, it will not. It will not support interviews, because that requires me to include data for which script it's going to load, whether referees are visible, all of that stuff, and it's just not. It isn't going to happen. So. Yeah, I think I was gonna say the Texas Deathmatch thing was a joke, because I get mad at people when they continuously ask me what it is because they don't watch old wrestling. So it's sort of an inside Discord joke, I guess, which is why I ignored it. um, will the text reset? Yeah, I had just answered that. Um, yeah, I mean every story should basically end up with you beating Joe Blanchard at some point, right? Um, and really, if you really wanted to do interviews, there's nothing stopping you from just making a bunch of nodes with the still images be an interview. I mean, you don't need to go to the ring with yeah, exactly. That's what I was just saying. The interviews can easily be done in the cutscenes. Yeah, totally. Um, yeah, it is. Honestly, I think this is just about as robust as Fighting Road. I think it's probably more robust than Fighting Road in some aspects, based on what I've seen of what Fighting Road does. Because you can set up variables and check against them and branch against them and that sort of thing, and give the player options based on um, what they have, based on variables that are saved. The only variable that Fighting Road seems to save is which group you belong to. So yeah, like it doesn't even save like if you win or not. um, like in the first time I played through the New Japan the first story mode, the first fighting road, it you go to America and you have a title match, and I lost the title match, and it still continued the story like I had won. So tag matches are set the same way you set a tag match in any other thing. You just put two players on the same team, and set it to a normal match, and it will be a tag match unless you have tornado set or something, or you set it to a battle royal. So yeah, tag matches are just as easy to set up as anything else. Does does Fighting Road not? I'm pretty sure that they have ratings thresholds that you have to score better than. Um, but I think that mostly they just make you redo the match if you fail them. This doesn't do that. You don't have to redo the match. I think I included an option to redo the match in the Greg Valentine one, where if you win but don't score above the ratings threshold, you can, I could do better than that, I think, was the option, and it will take you back to the beginning of the match and allow you to do it again. So, but yeah. Yeah, you could do nodes where you could choose your partner, because you could set up choices for partners and then send it to a different match or a different node with a different match data. So I would imagine that you would be able to port the Fire Pro Z stories pretty easily. Um, I would imagine that you would be able to port um, the No Mercy stories fairly easily. It they're basically just branching stories with cutscenes and match data. That's pretty much all those games are. So um, yeah, you should be able to do that, in theory, at least. Um, yeah, I did play through the Fire Pro Z stories a while back. They were pretty fun. They're basically, I can't remember. I think there are, you play Misawa, if I remember right, and it basically goes through his career. There might be more than one. I can't remember. It's been that long. Yeah, Phil was really big on me trying to do this with the Fighting Road. He wanted to know how Fighting Road could be modified right when it came out, when he was still more active in the community. Um, but this is sort of a little different than that. I mean, Fighting Road could be modified by players, but I don't like the way that they did it. It's like all text files with um, like every node is its own text file, and it's got its own commands file and its own this, and it's really it would be unintuitive for players to edit that. It's unintuitive for a modder, because then you have to worry about, like, oh, well, which file do I need to be loading here? When if you set it up my way, where everything is held in one data structure, you can load it all at once and parse it, and so yeah, it just Fighting Road was a mess. I don't know why they did it that way, but um, yeah, that's why I didn't bother with just trying to do this within the framework of Fighting Road. That's why I wrote my own. I just feel like this is more smooth, and it will have some issues. Things like that shadow thing that happened in the. There's nothing I can do about those shadows. You literally have to quit back to the main menu, and then start the match in order for the shadows to be gone. There's just nothing I can do about it. So. And that probably wouldn't happen if I had used the Fighting Road thing, because it's got all of the, it clears everything properly and whatever. And for some reason, when I try to clear things, I end up with null reference errors, and I don't know why. So obviously I'm doing something wrong, but I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong. So Let's see. Yeah, you could convert. You could probably port special story to. You could probably pull the. You might even be able to pull the images from the ROM. I don't know how that works these days. But you might be able to do that and have the whole story complete with images if you wanted to. So, um, but yeah, you could do a lot of things with it. I'm hoping to see some interesting creative stories that I can play through, um, you know, at some point. Yeah, you could do that. You could just screenshot the cutscenes if you wanted to. So, yeah, that would be totally doable. But yeah, um, like I said, I'm hoping to play through some interesting stuff, not just ports of old Fire Pro stories. Although, if that's what people want to do with it, then that's fine too. Um, yeah, like I said, I'll. Oh, sorry, Arnold Palmer burp. Um, yeah, I can probably stick something in there that disables the text box if there is no text for the node. Um, I can't do that for the choices box, so that's always going to be there. There's nothing that I can do about that. I need that box to um, basically to make sure that the player can move through the story. So that's always going to be there, but I can get rid of the big text box. So. Um, I posted a test version earlier today, I think. So if you're looking to get into it, definitely grab it. It's there in the Discord in the test. What is it? Test version uploads channel, I think. But yeah, you can grab the test version and give it a whirl. Like I said, I think that there are a couple of small changes that I made to the version that I posted, which is what I use to stream. So there's a little bit of difference between the two, but it's not going to be anything that you're going to notice. It's things like me fixing the typo on story in the story group section where it said strawy or whatever, store, strowy or something stupid like that. Just some dumb typo stuff. Yeah, didn't fix anything or change anything really important. So. Vanilla edits cannot be loaded right now. It's just regular edits. I could probably add the preset wrestlers, but I'm not. It's not super important to me. If enough people bother me about it, I might do it. The issue with that is creating the. I don't know whether it would be legal for me to create the bytes files out of them, technically, because let's say somebody throws one of the Stardom girls into their story and then distributes the story, and the story creates the Stardom girl as an edit. Um, you know, that would be a problem, especially since it would use moves and stuff that they don't have access to, and I'm not going to check that stuff. So it's going to load in the story just like it does when you load it in, like, let's say you don't have New Japan, but you bought the Suda story. It uses some assets from that, and that's okay, but it doesn't open them up for the player. So it would be sort of similar in the story mode where I'll probably check the player's character to make sure that it doesn't use any moves or parts that it shouldn't, but after that, it's not going to happen. If the edits use modded moves, it will break your game. I'm not gonna do a check for that. It's up to the creator to not include edits with modded moves in the stories. It won't break your game permanently. It will just cause freezes. It will cause the freeze where one wrestler freezes when they try to use a move that doesn't exist. So I mean, it will be fine. Your save will be fine, but it will freeze your game if you trade stories with edits with modded moves. So yeah, I recommend not doing that. Use a move list for your modded moves. The story thing doesn't pull from the move list stuff. It doesn't include edits moves lists or anything like that. It just includes the basic Fire Pro data. So yeah, it won't like if you use the move list mod to add modded moves and then include an edit in a story, that moves list won't save with the story. It's not going. It doesn't. It's just the basic edit information that that Fire Pro contains itself. It doesn't include any of the Modpack data like an edit export would. So you don't have to worry about that. So as long as you keep your modded moves on and modded edit and custom edit parts on your moves lists and on your what the hell alternate attires. Fuck me, that's rough to say for some reason right now. Alternate attires. You should be fine, and it shouldn't cause any problems with anybody's games. If you do not do that, it will cause freezing. People's saves will be fine. They'll need to delete the edits. If you close the story window, it will delete the edits for you. If for some reason it causes a crash, like your game locks up and you can't quit because of a modded move or a modded part, then you'll have to go and manually delete the edits. Nothing I can do about that. Yeah, it will run fine on your save. You have all the parts and all of the moves that were used to create it, so it wouldn't detect any issues. It would only be an issue is if you have parts stored on the like the base edit mode edit with like custom parts or custom moves, and then you save that into the story and then sent the story off to a different computer that did not have the same moves the same moves installed in the same order with the same ID and then the same edit parts, that would cause problems. Yeah, like I said, I use the alternate attire mod for all my custom parts, and I use the move list for all my custom moves, so it's not really a big deal for me. But if you don't do that, be sure that you're not including them with the stories, because you can cause people some unwanted headache by including them in your story. I may add a check when you import an edit that just checks for it wouldn't really be able I guess it could check for custom parts. Yeah, never mind. But yeah, it will just check for the custom parts and custom moves, and if it finds them, it'll give you a warning. It won't stop you from doing it, because I don't know why you're exporting, or what you're going to share the story with. You could be moving it to another one of your computers with the same fucking, the same save game for all I know. So I won't stop you from doing it, but I'll put up a warning maybe. And I think that will be the best way to handle that. So, alright. I'm going to get off the thing now because my voice is starting to get a little sore. I've been talking for like an hour and a half. So, but I will be on the Discord fixing the things that we talked about in here and adding some of the suggestions and quality of life things that we just talked about. So, if you have any more questions, you can hit me up in there. If not, then you can give it a whirl. Like I said, there's a test version up already, so you can give that a shot. I'm looking forward to playing some interesting stuff, hopefully. So, alright, you guys have a good one.